University of the Western Cape has kicked off its annual Research Week. That was yesterday. This year's event focusing on the university's contribution to the advancement and well-being of society during the COVID-19 pandemic. The four-day event also doubles up as a platform to address common COVID-19 myths and concerns. Let's unpack the story for you now. Virologist Professor Burtram Fielding is also the Director of Research and Development at UWC. He joins us now via our video link. Prof, it's great to have you with us this morning on the show, particularly at what is really a key moment in our own third wave of the pandemic. The NICD just this week saying that we've exited the third wave. Tell us about some of the work that UWC, its professors and academics have been doing in the community.
Good morning, Michelle. Yes, so this is the fifth annual Research Week we're having at UWC this week, as you've mentioned, and we're very proud of our efforts. I think very early on in the pandemic, we realized that this is more than just a science problem. You know, it's a multidisciplinary issue, and we need to look at it from a multidisciplinary research perspective. So we have all 7 of our faculties presenting this week, and it ranges from a group working with Stellenbosch University, isolating the first coronavirus causing COVID in South Africa, to members from community and health sciences working with waste pickers and their plight at the labor court, to the plight of immigrants and the homeless. So it's very multidisciplinary, including education and the impact of education. We forget that this pandemic also has had a huge psychological impact on people. So we're even looking at it from that perspective. So we're very proud of this very multidisciplinary approach that we have used at UWC to address this issue.
Yeah, I mean, the university is so very, very involved in informing the public. In fact, 470 media engagements on COVID-19, and that's just since March of last year.
Exactly. And Michelle, you know, I think this is very important for researchers to step up. The WHO last year said we're not dealing with a pandemic only, but we're also dealing with an infodemic. So it's really up to researchers to take I almost want to say the vetted research out there, the vetted findings, trustworthy findings, and communicating it to community and the public in a language that all of us can understand. And I think traditionally universities have done very poorly in that. So I'm very proud of my colleagues at UWC for what we have achieved.
Yeah, and rightfully so. But personally for you, Prof, you've studied human coronavirus for almost 2 decades.
Yes, so I started in 2003 working in Singapore, and I worked on the first deadly coronavirus, SARS, 2003 to 2006 in Singapore. And my laboratory has been looking at other human coronaviruses as well since then. So we've studied pretty much 6 of the 7, and it's very interesting to see the impact that SARS-CoV-2 that causes COVID is currently having. So we understand the impact it's having on society, but from a science perspective, we're living in very exciting times because we're learning so much, preparing us for the next coronavirus pandemic that will happen.
Yeah.
Not if happen, it will happen.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking from your perspective as an expert on the issue, and the trouble with it is, you know, with the advent of social media in particular, there are very many experts floating about now, not giving the right information.
Oh, Michelle, that's the biggest problem. Everybody is an expert. I've been saying if anybody claims to be a SARS-CoV-2 or COVID expert, it cannot be. We've only been studying this virus for 18 months. So we really should be looking at the history of the studies of this family of viruses, which would then shed more light and kind of guide us as to where we should go with the current pandemic.
Yeah, and you know, the issue around an infodemic that you talked about, this lack of proper information in certain communities, because the right information is there if you know where to look. In your experience, in the work that you've done and that your colleagues have done, what are some of the most common questions that you're hearing around COVID-19 and perhaps around the vaccine as well?
So I'm still hearing that the vaccine is meant to implant a chip and it will make you magnetic. It's used for tracking. It will change your DNA. You will die within 2 years. And that very much is driven by the anti-vaxxer groupings. But more lately, I've also heard from the vaccine all groups where they claim that this is a silver bullet. This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. You are safe when you receive the vaccine. So really, there are, I almost want to call it half-truths from both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And as scientists, we need to be objective. We need to really look and present in an understandable language the positives and the negatives. And that's what we're pushing very, very hard from UWC.
Do you reckon that we've succeeded in doing that, Professor Fielding? As government has embarked on its own information campaign, have we succeeded in breaking down the information simply, without conflating the issues, just saying what the most important parts of the information are that needs to be conveyed to people?
Unfortunately, I don't think that has happened. We're now having the conversation about making vaccines mandatory and vaccine passports. And just to give you an example, to have that discussion without looking at those who were previously infected, without looking at being in a resource-scarce country and protecting those at higher risk, we're not having the complete conversation. If you look at the stats, the highest vaccine hesitancy is in about 60-year-olds. That is the group at highest risk of severe disease and death. So somehow, I'm almost, and this might be controversial, but it's almost as though we're underestimating our populace, and that they will not be able to make informed decisions. And that's why it has been my mission almost to go out there and say, this is the positive and this is the negative. You make up your mind. But if you are high risk, by all means, please seriously consider to take this vaccine because it does save lives.
Yeah, and I want to talk to you about, as we build up to the end of the year, projections are that the fourth wave will hit sometime around November, December. In terms of the trajectory of the virus now, the issue of herd immunity is one that we've also been discussing quite widely. Is that something that you reckon is possible if we get our vaccine numbers up?
Unfortunately, more and more experts globally are agreeing that herd immunity will not be achievable. If you look at a country such as Singapore, they've just implemented more stringent interventions. And they have 80% of their 4 million people vaccinated. I think we're looking at a virus that will eventually become a circulating virus. And very similarly to the flu, we would have to make targeted vaccinations, use our very effective drugs that we have at the moment, and really look at, I'm speculating that this will become a circulating coronavirus, the fifth one in humans, and that we will probably look at vaccines boosters every 2 to 3 years, based on what I've seen for the other viruses in the past. So herd immunity, I think, is a very, very moving target.
Yeah. The issue of elections on the 1st of November now, and the kind of possibly super spreader events that we're seeing already as political parties get on the campaign trail, that does not bode well either for what we're going to see unfolding, towards the end of the year. Do you agree with that?
Definitely. If we look at the very huge peaks we had in Brazil beginning of the year, India later in the year, in Brazil it was linked to Carnival. So hundreds of thousands of people coming together, no social measures, protection measures in place. And in India it was electioneering and religious festivals. So yes, the variants play a very important role in these peaks and the easier transmissibility, so the easier spread of these viruses. But the behavior of our people, that is extremely important, and we need social responsibility from each one of our citizens. Then I think we have a chance of minimizing the spread. Not eliminating it, but minimizing it.
So, Prof, as we round off our interview with you this morning, talk to us more about this annual research week. In fact, we've been talking a lot about various issues around COVID-19, and it is the theme of Research Week 2021, UWC contributing to fighting and understanding the COVID-19 pandemic, and the related topics are, in fact, quite wide-ranging.
Yes, please. I would invite all of your viewers to join us. This morning, for instance, and all the links are shared on social media, on Twitter, UWC Twitter pages, UWC Facebook pages, the UWC website. This morning, for instance, we're looking at law, and from the Faculty of Law, and they've worked very closely with the rights of various individuals that have potentially been infringed during this pandemic. We're looking at dentistry on Friday, where one of our colleagues, and they've just published the paper, have been awarded a patent for a device that minimizes the spread. Yesterday, we heard from our language experts and really how the language that we have used during this pandemic has changed. Where at the beginning, signs would warn you, and it would be handwritten signs. Please wear your mask, etc. Now we see pictures, very simplistic pictures. And yet all of that has changed, because we have people wearing a mask incorrectly standing in front of those signs. So our psychology colleagues would be speaking about, so how do we change the narrative with our public? Because, there is pandemic fatigue. People can hear us, but they're not listening anymore. So there's a different way that we need to speak to people. So each one of our faculties would showcase how they made an impact during this pandemic. So please join us for the next 4 days.
Professor Burtram Fielding is UWC's Director of Research Development. In fact, the university kicking off its annual research week just yesterday. Head on over to its Twitter and Facebook pages for information on how you can take part, on how you can listen in. Prof, thanks very much for your time indeed this morning.